Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Geeking Out Podcast. I am the Athletic Geek, joined by.
Organoid Zero! Woo!
So this week we're going to talk. We've already done an episode about our favorite superhero video games, but now we're just going to do our favorite video games in general,
Yes.
which I already know is going to be a tale of two different types of games because, excuse me, past 2015, I've maybe only played two new game, like really new games since then.
Mm-hmm.
Other than 2K17 and Fire Pro Wrestling, like I haven't, did a couple Mortal Kombat 10 Let's Play for the channel, but like other than that, I haven't played like a lot of new video games, but I have a lot of older and more obscure ones, so I know it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. But I'm gonna let the person that's more of a gamer start this one.
Oh boy, we started up bad. I'm gonna start out with, we talked about favorite superhero games. I, because of a friend of mine, am finally doing Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League because it was free on PSN a while back, and oh, oh, that thing's a joy. Anyway, so I'm gonna start with the game that was my favorite game for like 13 years.
Okay.
And for those that don't know, I was a kid of divorce. The magical thing, the only thing that's good with divorce is that you get dual gifts on both ends. It's legitimately the only good thing about a divorce. You get two Christmases. And I was a child of divorce when I was in elementary school, leading into middle school, which was around the time the N64 came out. So when I had games, I played them like 1,600 times because my mom got saddled with a bunch of debt. So I cherished very much what I had. But even though I still play the game at least once time through each year now, is Banjo-Tooie. Well, go ahead.
That's funny because one of mine later would be Banjo-Kazooie. I never got to play Tooie, but I played Kazooie.
Yeah, but both are fantastic. It's just there was some stuff in Tooie that pushed it over for me. But yeah, the banter between Kazooie and Banjo, the levels, they took everything to another level. You don't get a development of a game like old school Rare was.
Oh yeah, they were the kings.
Absolutely, they lived and thrived on the N64 era. Oh, yeah. Rare exists now. That version of Rare doesn't exist now.
Well, I mean, even like the Super Nintendo, like with the Donkey Kong Country series, and Rare always had like a great soundtrack too. I remember this wasn't on my list, but since you bring it up, they did a Ken Griffey Jr. baseball game.
Really?
That I always but what was funny about that game was they had the licensing through all the major league teams, but not the players union. So other than Ken Griffey Jr., they all had like crazy names. Like Randy Johnson wasn't Randy Johnson. He was Bolt Lightning. But like the sounds,
Bolt Lightning is the best. That would be my wrestling name, Bolt Lightning.
Yeah, like they were all like a bunch of like crazy names, but it's like you knew who they were, but they had like crazy names, except for Griffey. But like they made a good baseball game, and it had like this really like the soundtracks were always cool. Like they always had great soundtracks. And
oh, absolutely.
I remember playing like Rare was just from like 94 to whenever kind of the N64's life cycle ended, Rare was on top.
Do you want a hilarious story about Rare?
Sure.
When Xbox bought Rare, there was actually people at Xbox that thought they were getting Donkey Kong because they bought Rare.
Well, it's very funny you mention that. Not so much Donkey Kong, but you mentioned when Xbox bought Rare. So while we're on the subject of the Banjo Kazooie, Banjo Tooie, all the Banjo games, we're not
Yeah.
going to talk about nuts and bolts because why would you want to?
Because no one needs to bring that up ever. Because it's a
Yeah,
travesty that I wanted to burn on sight within the first 5 minutes of playing it.
yeah. And I like racing games, but not that one.
No. Not out of my platformers unless you're doing Crash Team Racing, which is like the only good version of that.
Um, so I remember for my ninth birthday, I got Banjo Kazooie for the N64. Now, I was 9, and I didn't, for the longest time, have the internet, didn't have a strategy guide. So I plateaued at Mad Monster Mansion in that game.
Oh, I could see that. I could see that.
Um, so I was just kind of like always, I'd go back there and then get frustrated. There are things now I like look back and I'm like, of
Of
course, all you'd have to
course.
do was this. But
Yes.
then, to a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, obviously some kids figured stuff out better than me. I couldn't.
No.
So I got that for my ninth birthday. Around the time of my 20th birthday was when Banjo Kazooie came onto the Xbox Live Arcade, and I bought it then off of the Xbox Live Arcade. And then I had, like, if I got stuck, I either kind of like was older to think outside the box on a few things, or maybe not outside the box, but figure some things out a little bit better, or just use YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And then 11 years later, I finally beat Banjo Kazooie. Granted, I had help. I didn't do it all on my own, but I had,
Yes.
11 years after getting that game for the Nintendo 64 for my birthday, I was able to finally beat it on the Xbox Live Arcade. And then never downloaded 2, even though they were saying they were going to incorporate the stop and swap, which didn't materialize on the N64 version. And there's plenty of videos stating why that happened. But yeah, no, I love Banjo Kazooie because basically it took me 11 years in 2 systems and going through puberty and going to college, graduating high school and going to college, but I finally beat it.
That's like a Banjo Tooie was one that I made my way through it. I actually beat Tooie before I beat Kazooie because I got stuck at around the same spots you did in Kazooie. Because people that don't know, the midpoints of those games are great, but then once you get toward the later end, and especially the ending boss fights, and especially in Tooie, if you don't know what you're doing, those ending boss fights with Gruntilda are hard as shit compared to what the rest of the game is. And yeah, there was you play GoldenEye, obviously. I would
I've
assume
played it. I never owned it, but I've played it.
there was a GoldenEye inside of Banjo Tooie. There was a first-person shooter multi-level multiplayer game in it with the characters. There was a like air combat flying. There was so much stuff they ended in there, and the thing ends with a giant game show quizzing you on the entire game before you do a giant boss fight in a tower. Now, one thing I'll do as a runner-up before we get to your next one, that game that you just mentioned with Banjo Kazooie was me with Donkey Kong 64.
Never, I never owned that game. I played it twice. I never got that one. I mean, like I'm not saying it's a bad game or that I'd be against it, but I just never. I saw it on TV. I'm like, hey, I'd want that, and then I'd see a different game, and be like, I don't need that.
That one is in my top 10. I played it so many times and then got caught. I want to say it was I'm blanking on the level names. I want to say it was Crystal Cavern, and then like there was a haunted castle that I can't think of what the next level was. And then I always got drowned out around there. And then I was finally like, fuck, I should really try this. And then my buddy's like, well, let's just play through it. We got through it, and we spent like a couple of weekends in a row because it was high school. We always had no homework. And we finally got to the ending boss fight. And I want to say my junior year of high school, I beat the game that I started when I was in 5th grade. But before you go somewhere, and anyone who's not watching this, anyone that wants to play N64 games that like want to go back to them, go look up the Analog 3D. It comes out this year. They're making a 4K N64. A company is that has wireless controllers, but it'll take naturally normal controllers.
Okay.
It's awesome.
I'm always afraid. I'm always afraid to buy stuff like that because it's like they charge a lot of money and then you get it and it sucks.
Well, I would say that, but this is the company that I've gotten products. It's one I could say I've gotten products from before, so I can trust them. It's
Okay.
anyone look into it. It looks awesome. But yeah, Banjo Tooie. Until the next game I'm going to talk about after you, that was my favorite game. That took until 2018. No, 17. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go with the first ever video game I owned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I owned. I remember the first 3 video games I owned, and I got 2 of them for Christmas when I was 4 years old. One of them was Thomas the Tank Engine, which is what it is. That's not the game I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
But for a 4-year-old, who likes
Yeah.
who likes trains, I mean,
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with it. But the one that I would keep going back to was Super Mario All Stars for the Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's just 16-bit remakes of the original 4 Super Mario games for the Nintendo, NES, regular Nintendo, whatever you want to call it. But with the controller of the Super Nintendo, it made the games play a whole lot easier and a whole lot better.
Yep.
Because I remember going back and playing them on regular Nintendo at friends' houses and it being so much harder. Also, you could save your progress. Like, it was basically Super Mario with all of the new accoutrements that came from the Super Nintendo. And I played everything on this for 20 years. Like, I would unplug the PlayStation 2
Nice.
and the N64 to still try and, as I got older, to try and get past those last few little things. And, Super Mario 2 and Super Mario 3 never beat lost levels, which is part of the game. The game that was too hard for Americans, and I see why.
Yes.
Yeah, that game was what put me on the. I guess we'll just talk about it now, unless you got more to just put me on the Mario train.
No, you're good.
Because from there I got Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. Love that game. That's the first Mario game that I ever beat on my own. Granted, I did some cheating. I used Star Road to get right to Bowser, and it took me a while to figure out what to do with Bowser, but I defeated Bowser and defeated the special, which I hated afterwards because I couldn't switch everything back because it made like everything goofy. I'm like, I wanted to go back, and then I couldn't, so I'm like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. But including Tubular, the hardest level ever, I still somehow beat Tubular. Super Mario 64, which is another one of my favorite games. That's the first game I ever received for the Nintendo 64.
Here's my second game.
I beat Bowser. I never, to this day, have gotten all 120 stars. I'm close, but I just kind of like, it's a good, like, I'll put it in, get a star, and like I'm still reaching, but I've never met Yoshi on my own, but I have beaten Bowser.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those are just also great games, and I know 64 like is now, and I hate this, but it's now like the ultimate. When someone goes back and talks about games like how this, it's the ultimate. This game actually isn't that good, and I don't understand why they always do that because it's like, okay, like yeah, it was on the Nintendo 64. It was on a cartridge. But it was still like it was the natural progression of Mario for that time. It went from 2D to 3D, and then okay, GameCube comes out, and I
And
never, I've not, never played any of the GameCube games,
half the
but
people that say will be like, well, compared by today's standard, that game's actually shit. Cool. They didn't make the game back then by today's standard.
I mean, I kind of get by today's, yeah, but it's also one of those like, okay, well, if you don't like old games, then just say you don't like old games.
Yeah.
You
They
know,
don't have to
like,
be shit. You can like something if it's old.
yeah, just say I don't like old games. It's the wrestling thing, like oh, Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat was overrated. Like, well, just say you don't like it because the only thing you like now is like death matches and flips. Okay, of course
Yes.
you're not gonna like Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat. If you like all the video and like if you're playing Call of Duty, you're not gonna, and that's like your standard of like what an
Mm-hmm.
ultimate game is, and you don't like any, and anything beneath that in terms of technology isn't for you. Yeah, of course you're not gonna like it. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with that, but
No.
you're not given like some sort of good opinion
No.
by saying you don't like Super Mario 64 or Crash Bandicoot or any of that generation's platforming games.
It was a game that was made at the top shelf of the technology capability of that time frame. That's like, well, in the future, like anyone is to say it now when what I'm going to talk about next. This blank trilogy, now 7 systems later, is actually shit because you can't step inside the video game now, so it's garbage.
I hate. I just hate that with game reviewers. Like, it's one thing. Like, again, like I get, you do have those, and I'm amongst them. I don't like new games that much, but not for the reasons that
Mm-hmm.
you know they say that the old games are bad. I just don't like microtransactions and loot crates and shit like that, which is
Mm-hmm.
abundant in games.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main reason why. But I you do have the boomer gamers that are like, they don't make them like they did in my day anymore, and like, okay, I get, not wanting to give much of a uh, anything to their opinions, but then you have people that just sound like they want to be smart by shitting on the old games, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's progression. It's
That's how it
progression.
works.
You know
Yes.
that's not that's not necessarily I don't feel that way about comic books and wrestling. You know, where because I still feel like a lot of old comic books and old wrestling are better than new comic books and new wrestling, or at least in some cases. But video games, like, of course, the graphics aren't as good.
It's
It's
of a
not an
system
apples.
that couldn't do
It's
it.
not an apples to apples comparison.
Yes. But then you get things like I'm a giant fan of Resident Evil. And like the Resident Evil 4 remake came out and then there was a Resident Evil 4 original. And in my opinion, in almost every way possible, the remake is better. But I'm not saying RE4 is a bad game, but then you would have people on the opposite thing where when they saw, and this is not a lot of people, but it is some people, and it blew my mind, they were upset that you could move while you were aiming. Because you couldn't do that in the original game. If you hit A and you were stationary. Are we actively mad that a natural, like, just game upgrade, like being able to move while aiming, is in this? Are we
Yeah,
that much?
that's
What?
dumb. Yeah, that's stupid. But
That's quality of life upgrades, people. What the hell?
but the whole like, oh, you can't just it when you play in, Super Mario 64, you have to press these buttons to jump. It's like, yeah, yeah, you do. Like, oh, there's not
Yeah.
an inventory. No, there's
There also
never an
wasn't a
inventory.
need for one.
Yeah, like, I love the Game Grumps, but whenever they went back and replayed Super Mario 64, and like, nothing on that game was like any worse than anything else they've ever played. And Aaron's like, God, this is why these old games are so overrated. I'm just like, Aaron, shut up.
Yeah. You're
Like,
gonna have
nothing
that.
about this game is any worse than any new game you've played. You're just a little upset that this old game's beating you right now.
You gotta get used to how the control mindset back was then, because a lot of people's mindset is how games should control now.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, that's Banjo and Super Mario. We got them. We
Yeah,
talked about.
so my is a newer game that is not loaded with microtransaction, is not a bunch of all the other crap. My new favorite franchise of all time is the Horizon series, Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. I thought, and I'm so glad this game got in before the if it has a female in it, it's woke garbage era of everything. Because people that don't know much about me. I do someday want to have kids, and I've always kind of had the cool thought of having the daddy's girl, just awesome daughter that I got to have great times with fun with. And then, like, never said it to anyone, never did into anything. And people that we talked about anime at some point, my favorite original anime back in the day, before I watched more, was Zoids. It was basically Gundam, except every robot was an animal. So then I see this thing, and it is post-apocalyptic tribal people harvesting machine parts off of giant robots. And I'm like, I think that's pretty freaking cool. And then more gets shown about it, and I see an interview. And then they're like, yeah, the guy who designed all of the mechanical beings in this was a giant fan of Zoids. I'm like, you need to stop right now. We can't be having this discussion. You cannot be starting me with that level of hype before I've even touched the controller on this game. And then this was in a time period where games go through shakes of like one game does a thing and then like 19 games will come after it. This was an age of called the era of the bow, where bows got put in video games with like Far Cry 3 and like Skyrim, and then everyone went, let's get a bow in our third person and all that. And I'm a person that loves them in video games, because to me, there's nothing like shooting a person is satisfying. But when I send an arrow clean through a person's head and you can see the full dislodged thing in them as they fall over, that is much more satisfying in my opinion. But it's a great action game that like is actual crafting that I'm normally not a fan of. That you can make better weapons, but it's not, you have 8,000 weapons. This one there's 32 weapons in the game, and eventually you can collect all of them. That's my favorite version versus like, I'm not saying this is a bad thing with Borderlands, because I like Borderlands 2, but you have 8 billion weapons in Borderlands. And then you never know if you're going to get the one. I like that you know you can get this and you go earn it and get it. I'm a bigger fan of that style of mechanic. But this thing turns into, which you're not going to play it, I know, because you don't play video games as much. This
I mean, I might play it. Never say never, but I'm not.
I'm gonna mention a spoiler. That's why.
Yeah, go ahead.
But it turns out that there was this guy named Ted Farrow who made this. What I best say? This version of mechanical beings that could fight wars, so humans didn't have to be involved. And then eventually, these things, to save on fuel, would degrade biomass in the field and ingest it. That's how they could keep fighting and just keep the war going and never have to stop. Eventually, they perceived humans as a threat, and it started wiping out all humanity because it was just biomass. And then they have this thing called Enduring Victory, where they knew that humanity was going to lose, but they got these like 6 or 7 unbelievably smart people to create this thing called Zero Dawn, to where they could seal all these people in a bunker, and they put out this propaganda project called Enduring Victory, where they lied to the world saying, if you can fight for so long, we can hit this doomsday button and it'll kill all the robots. That was not it. It did that, but it meant that no one on Earth other than those people in those bunkers was going to survive, and a new batch of humanity would be born like thousands of years from now. So they were screwed no matter what. They thought they were saving themselves, not the next version of humanity. And then eventually this guy Ted went nuts, and they created these things called like Apollo and Hephaestus. Like, one was to make robots that could forage the Earth and make the planet livable again. Hades was the extinction protocol in case their remaking of the Earth went bad. You could shut it down and they could restart. And then they had this thing called Apollo, which was the knowledge of Earth and all of its previous whatevers. He went crazy in his little rich guy bunker away from all the scientists and went, humanity's going to screw up if they know about this. So he nuked Apollo, making it so that no one on Earth had any knowledge of what anything was previously, so they had to start from scratch. And then killed all the other scientists so they couldn't fix it and like save humanity to start regular again. So that's why they started as like tribesmen when you're let out onto the Earth, because there's no way what normal technology is. And then this thing comes after Gaia, which is the main top of all these subordinate systems, and tries attacking her, and they don't know why. So she releases this artificially born child onto the Earth to try and fix everything that has the exact genetic code of this woman who is the top scientist that helped create all these systems so that she could help fix the oncoming problem when she got older. And you eventually go through this whole thing of her figuring out why she's led into all these weird caves, and you find out that she's the clone of this super big scientist that she didn't know she didn't have any parents. She's found out she was made by a machine, and then eventually she gets this like maid crew of friends that she comes along with, and then finds out that she actually did have a parent. She had a dad that cared for her, who raised her when they kind of like shoved her out of society. She was born out of a machine. And she eventually goes through this whole thing, saves everyone from this incoming apocalypse of stuff that was started when this machine again Gaia got attacked years later. And then after all this, she finds out all this stuff. The first game ends with her walking out to the ranch where they find this woman, Elizabeth Sobek, she was cloned after, who, to save everyone in the first place, she sacrificed herself by going out of the containment zone and shutting like a shaft, and died away from everyone. So it ends with her reading these like logs between Elizabeth and this Gaia woman, this machine, of like, you always talk about wanting to have kids, but you never had any of your own, and all this and that. And I'm gonna start crying. And she talks about how she was a wily kid and made a lot of trouble for her parents. And then as you're riding this machine to find where Elizabeth died, the woman you're named after, and you found it was your mom, she's like, what would you want if you had a kid? God damn it, I'm gonna start crying. And she's like, well, if I had a kid, I would want her to be strong, compassionate, all this, and strong in her choices, but willing to be open enough to help the world even a little bit. And it's this big, ongoing emotional thing about what she would want her future child to be. And it's exactly how this girl Aloy turned out. And it's as you walk upon this dead corpse of like in this protected like biosuit, and you see that it's her as you're watching this message. Like, oh, it like fucking fell apart. I'm like, ah! But and then like they have the next game where you find out more. And you talk about game mechanics and simple changes. The biggest problem in the first game was you had an inventory, but you could pick up too much and you just had a limit. It wouldn't over encumber you where you walk slow, but you just had so much. And the next game they went, this is going to make no sense, but you're going to like it. When your inventory fills, it just gets zapped to a random chest in your base camp. So every time you go back to your base camp, you hit square and it fills up all your stuff from your thing, and then you just run back out. So yeah, there is 9 million points between A and B of what I told you, but it's a very long drawn out like showing of taking away the curtain of the mystery and really telling it well. And it's just blew my mind that a game basically went, what is everything you like about media, storytelling, and game mechanics? And we just made it. It's here for you, and it's $60. Have it. You're gonna play it 100 times.
Yeah. Well, there's a series that I think you can argue whether it did, that I'm going to talk about here later, that you can say did that well or not so well or whatever, but that's not the next thing I want to bring up.
Okay.
So this is the third video game I ever owned. And there's nothing to say about it. I just want to mention it because it's one of my favorite games. Aladdin for the Super Nintendo.
I was just about to say that's the era of when you had to say Super Nintendo because there's two different versions of that
Yep.
game. They don't do this stuff
I
anymore.
was a Super Nintendo kid. I didn't have a Genesis. Wasn't anti Genesis. I'd play, Sonic and stuff at friends' houses, but I know this is sacrilege because I know Genesis does what Nintendo don't, and
Don't.
there's and they still and the Genesis people still like
Yeah, Nintendo does have a console still.
yeah, like they're still in that tribal mentality. Like this was early tribalism.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, I had it for the Super Nintendo. There's nothing to say about the game. It is a platforming. It is a 2D platformer of a Disney movie, but it's really fun. Like everything. Like I was already used to Mario, where like okay, you run, you jump on enemies' heads, and this just like was the next level. Like oh hey, here's a little peg, then you can jump and then jump up higher onto this one, or jump up higher, and then you can swing and you get more. Then you get a parachute and use that, and you can. It's just like it was for a child, for a 4-year-old child. It was like the next evolution, and here's the next step, and it was just really fun. Like even today, if you put that game in front of me, I'd put it in right now and do
Yeah.
a playthrough. That one I figured out. Like that's the first game I ever beat. Um, like I beat that at 4 or 5. Like I eventually figured it out. But it's just so like it's just so fun. It's a fun little game that you can get through.
And the music was fantastic.
Yeah, it's a Capcom game.
Yes.
You know, um, which I remember when I'd see Capcom, I'd always just think for the longest time I'd think of Aladdin, not realizing that they were like a giant of the industry in video
Yes.
games. But nothing really to say about it other than it was a fun little game that I enjoy. Nothing deep. Not like what the next series of games I'm going to talk about is. Nothing deep. Nothing. Um, really super duper life changing, and it's just a 2D platformer um of a Disney movie, but it was good. Like this is even one like unless you're being snooty, you can go back and go like, all right, this was an okay little game. It wasn't like even for a time, even back then, where we're moved, game. Everything had a video game, and a lot of them were bad. There was a Home Improvement fucking game, which
Yes.
I don't know how you pulled that off, but it was there. Um, where everything got put onto a video game, but this one was still kind of like, but this one's good.
Mhm.
It's got to stand for something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a small one I can mention before the last big one that actually I'll do a somewhat bigger one. The Life is Strange is because one I would mention that I could talk about for a whole entire freaking video if you ever end up playing it was Mass Effect because that one's just anyone who's played is going to say it. Life is Strange. It is basically a walking simulator, but it is a game where it's very narrative driven. And I was sworn off it for the longest time because I'm going to be honest, I was one of those people who went, that art style drives me insane and I don't think I'm going to like that game. And then I played it and I streamed it for a company or a website that I used to be a part of. And then I found myself at the end of a stream bawling my eyes out for 45 minutes because it hit me so hard and the exact frame of manner of like the situation of what the game was and what I was dealing with, except for the romantical elements, of what a past friend of mine. What the game is, you start off as this girl, Max Caulfield, and you're in a photography class. And you kind of are having a moment with the stereotypical bitchy teen, the less kind of like mopey teen who's having something going wrong, which, oh my god, that, whoa. But, and then the stereotypical art teacher's like, you need to have your assignments in it, blah, blah. And you go into the bathroom to like just kind of think to yourself and get some air. And then you snap this picture of a butterfly and you just have this picture. And then as it goes back, you start hearing this guy coming in, tripping balls. You can't figure out why. And then there's this girl there. And they have this interaction. and then a gun fires and this girl gets shot in the stomach and he runs out, and then you go no, and then in 2 seconds you're back at that desk where you started,
Ooh.
and then you're
I think
like,
I'm already picking up with this where this is going.
I'm like, what happened? And then you're replaying all the dialogue in that scene, but you know better what to say now because you lived through it and you're skating through it, and you get back and you change that. And then the rest of it is some of the best use of situational time travel ever.
Oh, okay.
Because what were you gonna say?
I was thinking like, did she die? And this is
Uh,
the afterlife?
no, because you watched the situation happen. You're watching a guy and a girl. It wasn't you getting shot.
Gotcha.
But and then like there's moments later on where you're trying to break into the principal's office to get info on like a shady kid that might be behind some abductions that are happening at the school, which you get entangled in. And then you do this thing where you concoct this thing to blow open the lock on the door and you get in, but the alarm is going off and the cops are going to come. So then you step inside the office where the door was locked, you rewind time, which means the door never exploded, the alarm never went off, and your friend is still trying to pick the lock, and but you're positioned on the other side of the door. So then you open it and your friend's trying to unlock it going, God, I'm not going to get used to those time travel powers of yours. I don't know how you did that, but we're going to. And then, but it's really interesting. And eventually there's this storm that you can't figure out what that you're seeing in dreams. And what it is basically you screwed with time. And this big storm is coming to wipe out Arcadia Bay, where all this is from. And you eventually find out that it's literally only there because you messed with time and you've kept alive this best friend of yours that was supposed to die in that bathroom. So you solved all these this what you find out was a murder mystery that your friends were involved in, and at the end you have a choice between keeping your best friend alive or killing your best friend, because if you keep them alive, the entire town is wiped out and you only have that friend left.
Hmm.
Or you let that friend, or your friend gives you this picture, which you find out later on you can time travel back to exact moments you took pictures of. And that picture of that butterfly you took in the bathroom, you can transport back to that and then sit there and let her get murdered. And then you have all the info of like where this all these murder mysteries happen and they don't know how, but you turn all of it in and all your problems get solved, but your friend dies. And no one gets to know that they helped, that they were precious to people and all. It's really gut-wrenching. It
Yeah.
involves you reconnecting with a friend that you haven't seen in like 5 years. So you reconnect with them, go through this whole big adventure of becoming best friends again, and then you're like, what are you going to do? Does your friend mean that much to you that you're going to risk the whole town? Or are you going to give your friend up because that was just a chance you met up with them in the bathroom in the first place? And then they've made like 4 or 5 games so far, and each time they have different powers. Like one of them is an empath that's really good, where like you can feel someone's fear while you're trying to interact with them. You have to be affected by it as you're getting in close, and they're really good. I can't recommend them enough. If anyone's ever not touched them, they're fantastic. I realize I just spoiled the entire first game, but it's still good to play. They're fantastic. There's a little bit of Gen Z slang in like shaka bra and whatever, but it's really good. Can't
Well,
recommend them enough.
well, mine's not nearly that deep, but basically, and it's so huge, and there's so many things about this series that was good, not good, great, mediocre, and everything in between. Mortal Kombat.
One of my other ones I was going to mention was Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks.
Well, that's it depends on how you're feeling on Shaolin Monks, but I didn't start playing this until my teenage years, like even the old ones. My mother was not a fan. You know, she bought into the whole Mortal Kombat is the too violent and all that, so I was never allowed to own it.
Yep.
But I would play it, and I eventually downloaded the original trilogy on Xbox Live and tried to play it, you know, because that's the arcade versions. Tried to play it the way they wanted you to. I couldn't always beat it, especially Mortal Kombat 2 and their cheap AI crap.
What do you mean those ending bosses are impossible?
Yeah.
What?
Not even the ending boss. Like your fight 2, the AI knows what you're doing. Um, but the thing about that game, and it's I didn't experience this as a kid, but I could, when I played it, like I could only imagine what it was like, because you just had to look out for the secrets, and it's like, oh, that just happened. Who was that?
Mm-hmm.
What? And you know, you were on the playground, you'd be going like, I saw this. There's a woman was in the trees. Like,
Yes.
yeah, you're lying. And
There
they're
was
like,
this
oh
guy
no,
on
I
the
saw.
bridge in the background. I
Yeah,
saw him.
yeah. Oh wait, I know I saw the woman in the trees. And then like, I fought this guy named Noob and he just killed me. But what talk about how, deep, and this is where, NetherRealm and everybody, associated with, the credit is they. I'm wearing NASCAR stuff, and one like phrase you always hear about a good racing driver is, you know, these people got the most out of their equipment. That's like, like that's a phrase a lot of fans use about like a driver like who may not have the fastest car, but he's so good or she's so good that they can get the most out of it. Like they have a car that's supposed to only be in the middle of the pack and they're able to get a top 5 or win with that car. That's how I look at NetherRealm Studios. They got the most out of every little bit of technology that
Mm-hmm.
they had, and Midway, or NetherRealm Midway, at the time in the early
Yep.
days. But everybody who worked on Mortal Kombat, you know, they didn't have all this technology to load in a bunch of deep stuff, but they had used every little thing they had to create a lore.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd find like you'd beat, for instance, you'd beat MK1, because I did beat MK1 with Johnny Cage, and you'd get his ending. Okay. But then you don't realize that in the canon, when you get into 2, you're not going to know unless you beat it all with Liu Kang.
Yeah.
And then when you beat it all with Liu Kang, like, okay, then
Mm-hmm.
and then all these new things happen. Then, going into 3, you wouldn't have known what happened unless you beat it with, it's so many different things. And they did so much great stuff with all that. And they kept that going for years and years, all the way up until Armageddon, which wasn't the greatest game.
Did you like the little like in Deception and Armageddon? Did you like the conquest modes?
I did not.
Okay.
I
I
well,
just
I liked the idea behind the conquest mode
the
in
execution.
the execution of it in Armageddon. I just think Taven is like the stupidest, worst fucking Mortal Kombat character that ever existed.
Yeah, if I got to play this, I loved the idea, the arcadiness of it, but I was like, Taven sucks. This
Yes.
is just bad. Like,
Yeah.
Shujinko wasn't much better in Deception, but I loved how big the Deception one was, so it made up for it a little bit.
Like the execution of like you actually have like a platformer and you beat up Bat, and then you'll like go meet various characters and have to do a fight with them along the
Yeah.
way, and there's a story, like that's all good. It's just they chose the most generic, boring, pointless, who gives a fuck character
Yep.
to be the of Armageddon. This was supposed to be the end of Mortal
Yes.
Kombat. Thank God they had other games, because if that's how you ended it with that piece of trash, you know. And then to me,
Create your own fatalities.
yeah, sometimes that was fun, sometimes it wasn't. There were things I liked about it, but sometimes I just, especially when they got to 9 right after that, and they brought back, the character specific ones, like,
Yeah.
that were so cool. um but but the worst part of MK Armageddon is I play through all this conquest mode, listen to fucking generic McGenericson of a character. Wow, strange. I am the hero. You need to stop. All that stupid crap. I go through all of it and I'm thinking, okay, at the very least, at least give me a cool ending going through that conquest mode. Nope. You just get the equivalent of if you would have done the latter with fucking useless.
Yep.
Because that's who he is. He's useless. Fuck Taven. But then we go into MK9, and I mention, Midway getting the most out of their equipment. And the first 3 games where, you got to keep your eye out. You got to do these impossible tasks, but, if you somehow do it, you'll get it. You'll get Noob Saibot this way. You'll see a rep, like Ermac appearance or
Error macro.
Yeah. And the story behind that's so fucking it's legendary. I love the whole that stuff. All the stuff you'd see. Then now they have the technology to do it on the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, etc. And they retell the whole story in a perfect manner that encapsulates all of that. Or retell it, retcon it, whatever you want to, say. But, I loved it because I'm a Johnny Cage guy, and Johnny Cage was like one of the few guys that didn't die. I'm like, hell yeah.
I can't remember what game it's in, but it was one of those. I want to say it was a Clash. You know how when you go against, you fight each other in the later ones like X and 11, how they go up against each other and say comments. I believe it's Katana who says, "Do you still have your name tattooed on your chest?" Oh, I love it so much.
Yeah, and the thing that's funny is like Johnny has the most character growth from 9 to 10 and 11.
Having him and Sonya finally get together and have a kid who was
great
was awesome.
Him and Sonya get together. They have a daughter. Johnny's still Johnny. Like but he's okay. I don't really care if he's settled down. He grew up. Yes. He's still got the swagger, but he grew up. He's like Shawn Michaels.
Yes.
Like that's kind of like the Johnny Cage arc. He's Shawn Michaels.
Yes, you're not wrong.
But just everything they're able to do, and yes, there are some misses. Yes, they created an end-all be-all game where fucking useless is the head character. And they got rid of all the, they have all the characters, but they changed so many things where it's just like, you're satisfied yet unsatisfied at the same time, but they, and they're still going. And they're, you could say they're being cheap by retelling the stories, but
it's so fun.
Yeah.
Like MK1 is a legitimate change up to a lot of things, like making that, like, the what happened to Melina be a Tarkatan virus. And making a lot of those people changing their names around. I was like, they're actually trying here. Like
MK1 is the ultimate Marvel universe.
Yeah.
That's the way I describe it. It's like, you're okay. There was the 616 universe that you've been through, but now this is ultimate, where you're going back to the beginning, but things are going to be real. You thought MK9 was, retconning was bad. This is like,
It's not a retcon, it's a rebuild.
Yeah, that was a retcon, this is a reboot.
Yes, exactly.
But just so many great characters, so many fun games, so much stuff to do. I would, sometimes try as I might, and I don't think I'm ever going to. I'm just not that good at it, but I try and go back and see all the secrets and try and do things like in the perfect order to get to 3, and unfortunately 4 not really as readily available, but if I have one life's goal with gaming, it's try and do the MK series in the way they intended. Win 1 with Liu Kang, win 2 with whoever you need to win it with, win 3 with Raiden, win 4 with and try and progress, try and get the clues to how they progress the canon.
Yes. I get you there.
And win them all with Johnny Cage because fuck yeah, Johnny Cage.
Did you play the Sub-Zero mythologies and all those side games or anything like that?
I did not play those.
Okay. I had Mythologies on the N64. That game
I
was
did
fun.
not play that. I've played 1, 2, and 3. I've played 4, never owned it, never could beat it. Played Shaolin Monks. Um,
Did you like Motor Combat? And
I did actually. I did. I
that
thought that
was
was
all. That's one thing they don't do anymore. Like the stuff in Deception and Armageddon, I liked. I liked the chess game. That was actually kind of fun. The Tetris with fatalities, which was fantastic because I think it was MK9 or Deception or 10. Someone was interviewing Ed Boon at a con where he's like, would you try anything random or try whatever? He's like, would they still have fatalities? He's like, yeah, I think even if we made a puzzle game that had fatalities, if someone raised their hand and went, Ed, you had a puzzle game in Deception and it did have fatalities, and he just goes, I don't like talking about those games.
my favorite out of all of them is 9 because I
Mine's up
feel
there.
like it's kind of before everything got too convoluted. The combat style got updated the way I like it, but it didn't get, you had everything I wanted out of a Mortal Kombat game with 9. And then you had some fun.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
How did you feel about Mortal Kombat versus DC? I know I have to ask you this considering who you are.
I, for the price I paid for it, I liked it.
Okay.
If I would have got it when it came out for $60, I would have been mad.
Okay.
Me and my buddy do joke about that because that I think they put Shazam in there just so that way during the MK version of that, they could have the misunderstanding of, wait a minute, Lightning Bolt, I've heard about you, whenever like it was the Flash that did it, but really, but then they're fighting Shazam. But I like it well enough. Just left a lot to be desired.
The fatalities?
I mean,
Kano stomps on someone's chest, fatality.
I get I want to keep a T rating for it, especially with superheroes.
Yes.
And I like how heroes didn't have fatalities. I thought that was clever. That was really good.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that part.
They have heroic brutality, which that was cool, because if you have like fucking Superman killing somebody, you're
like they didn't even do it in Injustice, and he was evil.
Yeah. But I thought that was good. Good for when you got it on sale for $20, it's a great game. If you paid more than $20, you leaving a lot to be desired. But Mortal Kombat 9, one of the things I liked about Mortal Kombat 9 was they just had the big ladder. Like random, when you find yourself in random situations, like that was cool. I like the test your luck mode.
Yeah.
Like where they'll put just random stipulations in it. Like that was, I loved it because there was a guy that I worked at McDonald's I could never beat. Him with Rain or Scorpion or Sub-Zero was a nightmare. He was so fucking good. But then I do okay, let's do a test your luck battle. And he just that would throw him off his fucking game so much where it's like, I know how to beat you now. That's the only way. I don't care if it's not a real fight. I got you. I got you.
One of my favorite things in that was to test your mights, where if you failed, you got off-screen execution by the people that were watching you.
Yeah. Or test your sight, they do the little game or whatever. But yeah, if you didn't, you'd get it, and then you'd see Kung Lao would throw his hat and kill you, or
so fast.
Scorpion would just
spear your head off.
Spear your head off, yeah. It's like it'd be like a hero too. Why did Nightwolf want to execute Johnny Cage for messing that up? I thought they were on fighting for Earthrealm.
Exactly.
That's that's the nitpick. Okay, it's Johnny. Okay, well then have Scorpion kill him, or have something from Goro or something from Shang Tsung kill him, and then if you have Scorpion, then you can have Nightwolf's axe decapitate him or something,
Yes.
That's a nitpick. It's really? That offended you that much? That offended you that much, Kung Lao? Really? You really had to kill Sonya for that? Like that was a real big fucking deal, wasn't it, Kung Lao?
Yeah, it's one of those things that are kind of like, well, that was the same thing where I like
It's
again,
funny, but
it is
still.
funny, but I was like, you just did it to do it. Like Kung Jin would like in X do the same thing where you'd see an arrow come off screen and like peg Cassie in the head. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, it's because you finally had a bow guy. I understand. You needed to do it.
But and even that game, like I went back and on the channel redid a Let's Play, and Fathead, the guy was partnered, the buddy who we were doing the drinking and gaming Let's Plays with, he would go back and be like, look at the graphics, and then he'd be like, it's come so far, I can barely play this now. It's like, dude, I'm loving this. Like, why are you taken so aback by this? But that's just that's also the casual gamer and the hardcore gamer and the different philosophies you're gonna have.
Yeah. I will say, I always do love the joke of like, wow, these graphics are so realistic. They look like a real thing. And then it just shows
The
back that
graph,
we said that about like an N64 game. Like, oh
yeah.
yeah, I did say that at one point.
Well, I mean, like the N64, yeah, like when you're used to playing like, and we'll do a whole episode probably on wrestling games in the future.
Oh
But like
yeah. Oh
when you
yeah.
play Super WrestleMania and you look at that, and then you get to the N64 and see WrestleMania 2000 and see the Undertaker from Super WrestleMania and the Undertaker from WrestleMania 2000, you're like, oh my god, like especially if you were growing up through that was amazing.
Okay, it was, dude. It's
Yeah.
like you don't catch yourself because you're so mesmerized by the graphical upgrade. You're
Or
like,
like playing a
it's so
sports
good.
playing a sports game, or like you're playing Madden 96 on the Super Nintendo, and like, okay, I know they're the Denver Broncos because their helmet is blue and their shirt is orange. And then when I do a play, it tells me that was number 7 John Elway that made the play. Okay, like cool. And then you get to Madden on the N64 and you're like, what? Like that looks like the Broncos jersey.
Jersey.
That says Elway on the back. I see the logo on his helmet. Yes, okay. The graphics are amazing. And then, now they have like, well, Madden sucks, but these days, but like you see like eventually got near like you saw like, oh, that's straight up Peyton Manning's face right there. And oh, he just threw an interception and he's frowning. Oh, he threw a touchdown and he's smiling now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy how far stuff like that has come.
Just something just to recognize, because there's all the N64 haters out there. Just look at I just mentioned that. Look at the jump you got from Super Nintendo to N64.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I know they're the Broncos because orange and blue, and then all of a sudden, at least the full on, like the recognizable uniform. It may not be like so realistic, but it's like, okay, yep, that's the uniform. That is exactly what I see. That is pretty well what I see when I watch football on Sunday.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's just the little bits. It's the little things I'm happy about.
Watching the Super Nintendo NASCAR game where it's just like, it's like, okay, it's best I'm gonna get. And then N64, it's like, oh wow, actually it says Tide and Ford and Coca-Cola on the side of it, like you see on the races. This is amazing.
Yes. Yeah,
but it never had the beer sponsorships, which I always still laugh at. Is like now they can, because you can confirm your age, but like all the old, but like all the old racing games, if there's like a tobacco or a alcohol sponsorship, it would just somehow like have the driver's name written in the font. Like Dale Earnhardt Jr., he didn't drive a Budweiser car, but it looked like the Budweiser logo and said Dale Jr.
Yes.
Or it looked like the Miller Lite car, but it said Rusty instead of. That was always their workaround.
Hey, the people at home understood what it meant.
Yeah.
And you got through it. It's what you needed to do.
Yeah.
100%. I don't know why that made me think of it, but like, do you know like certain censorships for blood in anime? I know we talked about anime a while back, but like instead of censoring it with just like not showing blood, they would just make it be white.
I didn't know about that. No,
Some yes, it would just make it be white instead of red, and it makes some bad situations.
I think in some cases I think that would look worse.
Oh, it does. It looks worlds worse. Censorship for certain things are like you could get automatic censorship for certain things like paintball mode in the N64. You could get other things like that, and
that like I like.
yeah,
Because that's how I was able. Because my mom was real big on the no blood, violence to minimum video games. But if we could turn on paintball mode, if she walked in and saw us playing that, she wouldn't get as mad. She'd be like, "What are you doing? We're shooting paintballs."
yeah.
She'd be like, "Okay," but like, nope, they're not dead. They just shot him with paintballs. He's out. You know. So that saved my bacon. And like again, we'll have a full episode on wrestling, but on the THQ Aki games, turning bloodshed off saved my bacon from Now, if she wasn't home, I'd turn it on.
Come on.
But if she was home, bloodshed and realism was off.
Off. Yes. No, I get you there. I get you 100%. That was something where it's like it's that little bit, and then you get points where a game that I should mention quite often, I think I've quite literally beaten it 400 times, was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, where my mom trusted me enough to be an adult where she's like, I trust you, but you're buying it if you're gonna play it. And
That's how mine was when I bought Vice City and 3. I never played San Andreas. I was kind of like, well, she had to go in there when I bought it, but she's like, you're spending your money, and you're 14. I trust you now.
Yep, that's exactly what it was, and it's just like, see, you're learning to responsibility to get this stuff, and see, yeah, like you did it. I learned from an early age, and then I started buying my own video games because I knew I could get the ones I wanted.
But yeah, I like games. I just the new ones. I either know I'm going to fall down such a rabbit hole, or I'm so far behind in. Because now it's like if you play Call of Duty, you've had to have been like playing Call of Duty for a while. It's like playing sports.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just jump into football at 30. You had to have been playing since you were at least in high school to be able to keep up with everybody else who's been playing.
Yeah.
So if I try to go in and play Call of Duty, I'm gonna suck, and it's not gonna be any fun. And people who play online are kind of dicks. I have never to this day played Halo a day in my life.
I don't blame you there because I have played it myself, but I will tell you, if you ever want to get the graphic comparator, if you ever somehow play through Halo and you get the Master Chief Collection, there's a thing where you can press, I believe it's the right stick, and it shuts off the brand new graphics and goes back to the old ones on a dime. You can actually see how it differentiates.
I remember
it's really cool.
Somebody gave me Halo, just gave it to me. I didn't pay for it. They're like I got rid of that system. You can have this, and it sat in I'm just like, I don't want to. I never I'm not knocking Halo. I'm not bashing the game or the series, but I'm just like, I never got into Halo, and it sat there. I'm like, today do I put in Halo? Nah.
The honest to God games I would suggest you to play now, and I know we've had this discussion, so you said you get sucked into it. Honestly, for you as the person who you are, I would say is the Spider-Man games on the PlayStation.
I've played a little bit of them. I went to a friend's house and played some, and I was bad at it.
It does have a little bit of a learning curve because it is roughly Arkham-style combat, but you have a lot more verticality and other things involved. But once you master that shit, you are invincible. It is so much fun.
I'd love to play it, but right now, just give me a PlayStation and the Activision games, man. That's what I want.
Yeah, no, I get
Speaking of which, I want to give one more shout out before we end this one on one of my favorite games. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I never got to play. I was late to the party and only got 2, and then I didn't want to. Never got to 3. I played 3 before, but I never got deep into it. But Tony Hawk 2 for both the N64 and PlayStation, I played and beat both of them. The PlayStation version was better, but this is one where like you needed the movie, you need the videos that you unlock, like just unlocking shit. And the N64 was fun, but when you beat all of it, you didn't really get much. And then like when you beat one in PlayStation, and then you get that like video of them skating, of whoever you beat it with skating, including Spider-Man.
Yes.
Straight up a guy wearing a Spider-Man costume, skating around a skate park, and that's like your reward. Yes. I was a Nintendo 64 kid, but when I upgraded to PlayStation 2, I got Tony Hawk 2 for PS1, played it on my PlayStation 2, and then realized just how much I was missing on that version.
Yeah, it's a different story.
I don't throw shade at the N64, but that game in particular, you needed it on the PS1 to appreciate it.
Oh, I agree 100%. And like that was another thing where I didn't know a lot about great like soundtracks or music, but when I tell you, when I was in middle school singing Superman by Goldfinger every day, I was. And then they did those remasters. They also had Bring the Noise by
yeah.
But like
When Worlds Collide.
Yeah. And
so many songs I got exposed to. Like there's video games in general. You look at my Spotify playlist, there are so many songs that I heard for the first time in a video game, be it Tony Hawk, be it Grand Theft Auto, be it Madden, be it NCAA football, be it WWE 2K. There's so many songs that the first time I ever heard them was in a video game.
Oh yeah. That was a lot of the SmackDown vs. Raw soundtracks for me.
Yeah.
Those soundtracks were insane.
Like there was like I have a Debaser by the Pixies on my playlist because it was on NCAA football 2006. And there was that was a weird soundtrack because it's like these are all great songs, but it's kind of like this is not the song that you do a touchdown dance to.
No, that was like Styles of Beyond with the SmackDown versus Raw soundtracks. So like, who the hell are these two? And then all of a sudden I heard Fort Minor. I'm like, those are the guys from the SmackDown versus Raw video games. I know who they are.
Then there was that one 2K game where they let The Rock pick all the music, and you got George Thorogood. Like I mean, like I'll say this: I appreciate The Rock's eclectic taste in music,
but not for a wrestling game.
Yeah, but then like whenever I'm hearing George Thorogood, like while I'm trying to book a match, I'm like one bar band, one shot. Like I don't want to hear this right now. This is not fitting my vibe.
No,
it's a great song, but it's not fitting my vibe right now.
No, it's not. It's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then you get, like you said, when Worlds Collide, they had that again with freaking when SmackDown vs. Raw happened. I was like, half of this soundtrack is Power Man 5000 songs I didn't know existed.
Yeah. But I'll say about Tony Hawk 2, like every song in that game was perfect. Every song fit the vibe of that. It was, whether it was punk rock music, metal music, or like the rap songs were kind of like sticking it to the man on the streets,
Oh, yeah.
Everything fit skating. Whereas as much as I liked all the cool songs on NCAA football or Madden, there are certain times I'm listening to it, I'm like, this great song, but doesn't make me think football.
No. And again, they're like, awesome, but why am I listening to this? Like, that's going to go on my playlist to listen to in my car.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the one time, like, they had, a Nirvana song on a Madden game, and I'm like, I think Kurt Cobain's spinning in his grave, knowing that one of his songs is in a football game right now.
Uh-huh. This is not what he would have wanted.
This is the complete opposite of what he would have. This is bad.
Oh god.
Not only is it being on a video game, it's a video game about sports. That's not Kurt Cobain.
Yes. A corporate entity went, yes, Nirvana is the thing I want to promote this.
And that's also something I've called out on, like the sports games that have licensed music. They put popular songs in, and some of them work, but it's also one of the a lot of them don't. Yes, why not just buy the rights to Who Let the Dogs Out and keep that on there, because that works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I want permanent rights to Who Let the Dogs Out, and we'll put that in every football game from now until forever, because that's something you hear. Put in the rights to We Will Rock You.
Yeah.
And We Are the Champions for whenever you win the Super Bowl. That's great. Why do I need to hear, this is a cool newfound, it's showing, my age, but, Newfound Glory sounds cool, but why? Why is this in a Madden game? Why is this being played in the stadium when, that's never played in any stadium?
Or jump around by
yes.
Now I can't think of them. I'm blanking, but it's played during all the Madison games here in Wisconsin. I'm just like, this is the type of stuff I want to hear.
Yeah, buy the permanent rights to those instead of here's a here's a Lady Gaga song. It's like, no!
Oh, shut up! Get out of here! I don't want to hear Poker Face while I'm tackling someone.
Yes. Just give me the normal stuff and permanently pay for that. But whatever, it is what it is.
Yes.
And on that note, this is obviously something we can talk about again at some other point, because there's me, the non-hardcore gamer, has not even scratched the surface in the games I've liked.
Yes, absolutely.
But if you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. Follow me on my social media pages, facebook.com/athleticgeek89, Twitter, X, that thing owned by the guy people hate, at athletic_geek89.
I love it.
And Instagram at athleticgeek89.
You can find me everywhere at Organoid Zero, mainly on Twitch and YouTube. If you are interested in anything cosplay or conventions and stuff like that, you can find me at my Instagram at Organoid Zero. I'll be going to Anime Milwaukee if anyone's going to be there, dressing up with some Devil May Cry characters if you're interested. This should be releasing, actually, I believe, the week that I'm going. So if it didn't, I'm sorry I missed it by a week. But, and then my other podcast, I guess I could do is Zeroing Out. Yeah, is a weekly podcast. We normally go for about 2 hours, where I fill up a Google Doc and then everybody else does. Then we just rifle through movie news, gaming, sometimes Indy 500 whenever our one member Tommy decides to pop on once every 4 months to talk about it. But yeah,
I'll be there for that one.
Yeah,
I will be there for that one.
Okay.
Let me know when that one's there. I will make time for the Indy 500 one.
Yes. I will let you know. When Tommy finally gets in, I will let you know, because I know I'm a person who will be listening and wanting. But yeah, literally no subjects off topic. Just you bring it in, and you're the one talking about it. But yeah, it's a good time.
All right. Well, until next time.
Bye.
Have a good one.